Well, hello there, I'm Detroit. Before I get into the sketch and the drawing process for Anubis, there are 2 or 3 short things I want to say. First of all, consider subscribing if you want drawing content delivered right into your feed twice a week. Second thing, let's take a look at the Detroit Variety channel as a whole. You know, just to see where we're at. I like to do that sometimes to serve as a log for future me, to look back on the journey to get to wherever we'll be at the time. When I'm writing this channel has 364 subscribers. I have uploaded 169 videos, including this one, and more into the analytics side, I seem to be gaining about 25 of you per month, with 2,750 views and 100 hours of watch time per month as well. Total views of the channel are almost 22,000, and most of that is coming from my Photoshop animation tutorial, 6,000 views to be precise. It's by far my most watched video, and coincidentally, it has one of the dumbest versions of my avatar I ever made. Anyway, that's it for this channel's progress. It's really interesting, I think. When I watch people on YouTube, I wish I could know how their progress went exactly, so I could have something to compare to. If you're in that case, you can have my analytics info, and I hope it helps you. Moving on to today's digital painting. This is Anubis, the Egyptian god of death. He's a pretty cool dude, and I want to draw him as it was during his teenage years, some 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. The sort of pose I'm looking for is dynamic, but not out of a scene. I want the character to be posing, basically. The pose reference I'm using is a picture I found on Karina Farek's Twitter, @Dilfozor. She's awesome at drawing male anatomy, especially for cartoon and manga, as the proportions are not that realistic. I don't think any real person has a chest so large and stuff like this. Like, these proportions are much more Superman-esque, if you see what I mean. Anyway, the pose is good. What I'm concentrating on is balance. For any static pose, the center of gravity should always be above the point of contact with the ground. If you take Anubis, the way he is postured, it makes sense, like he's not going to fall over. The more complicated a pose becomes, the easier it is to forget about that simple fact, about balance. Continuing on the sketch, here are the things I want to include into the character design. First off, the obvious thing. Anubis is a human-jackal hybrid. That basically makes him a furry. What I'm going to include also is an ankh balanced on top of his finger. Since he's an ancient Egyptian god, it just feels right. Teenager Anubis has his sweater tied around his waist because I want to emulate the sort of light-colored and gold sash in which Egyptian gods are often depicted. At the same time, Anubis is a teenager and dressed for the modern world, so instead of a sash or skirt, it will be a hoodie. In the same vein, I absolutely want the breastplate/collar/golden jewelry ornament somewhere in the design. I'm going to make it part of the t-shirt Anubis wears because it's weird for a random guy to wear a golden chest plate nowadays, somehow. What is also weird for today's world, but I still wanted, is the stick Anubis is often seen holding. I like the shape of it, and I think it ties in nicely with the composition. Also, you have to trust me when I say the stick is held on his back by the tied sweater. And that's about it for the design. Oh no, I forgot to mention ear piercings, and the Anpu on the shirt is another name for Anubis that I like. Whatever, this drawing process is made of 3 parts, quite simply. Sketching, inking, and coloring. Let's move on to inking, alright? I am using my textured inking brush that I like a lot. The pressure of the stylus on the tablet defines the size of the brush, with a base size of 8 points. This is a thin line size. By the way, the canvas is a square of 17-inch side, with 300 pixels per inch. For the line art, I am not going over every line that I sketched, because I want to keep the line art a bit loose, but still clean. For example, I know I will have to render folds on the knots of the sweater, but I don't need to include the black lines here. You see, it's all about where your eyes will go. The area with the knot is already a bit crowded, so I don't want to draw more attention to it. Same with the breastplate design on the shirt. I will not draw individual lines on it. I will just color it later, and that's enough. On the inking process itself, what I can say is that the character as I drew him is very angular. Each individual line is a bit curved because it feels better and more lively, but the points at which lines join are very well defined. The side of the head, the shoulder, the chest even, these are all very angular, which I really like. It adds an edge to the character. That's also fitting since Anubis is a god of death. He's bound to be a bit edgy, which is also reflected in his smirk, his pose, his raised eyebrows, and the way he looks down at you while toying with his ink. You know what? Since there's not much to say about the line art, but it's not over yet, let me tell you a few things about Anubis. He looks like your typical jock college student, but really he's more of a nerd. He likes tabletop games, but not video games though. He's bad at them and he hates losing. He hates it even more when people call him a noob. Anubis, get it? What he likes is walking at night when the city is asleep. The darkness reminds him of the necropolis, the kingdom of the dead he used to rule before enrolling at uni. Don't worry though, now Osiris has taken over, so it's all fine. The fun thing though is that when you see him at night, you will get scared, even though he's a good soul and would never do you any harm. It's because of his imposing silhouette and his shiny golden eyes. Pretty cool dude overall. Now let's talk a bit about coloring, shall we? I already talked about the color scheme a bit, so you know there's gonna be gold in this design. Obviously Anubis has really dark skin too, so I'll contrast that with the light blue t-shirt that also works well with the yellow hoodie. So after making a flat color mask for the whole silhouette, I am coloring the areas separately. For a convincing overall picture, I am also choosing a tone for the background. The tone of the illustration will be mostly blue and cold. Again, that's for the edge of the character. So 60% blue, 30% yellow, and I decided to make the highlights red. That's gonna bring a bit of warmth into the overall design. As I said, I am rendering the folds on the knot, then I'm moving on to the rest. I'm using the basic Photoshop round brush with pressure size and pressure opacity. This is quite cartoony, so I can keep the shading loose. I'm not thinking of the colors too much, I am literally adding layers and layers of shading while tweaking the opacity of the layer when the render is a bit too heavy. One thing you probably can't see but that makes a difference was adding a layer of red coloring with very low opacity on the skin. It adds a bit of warmth and texture to Anubis' look. You know, I'm glad I chose a very dark character. This definitely helped since I didn't have to be good at drawing hands, for example. The dark skin makes the individual fingers hard to see, so that's nice. Especially after adding the warm highlights on the silhouette, it really distracts you away from these key areas where the drawing isn't that good. That's art, baby, drawing attention away from the weak points. With all of that said, the illustration is almost done. I'll simply add a glow to the ink, tweak the highlights layer a bit, and add the teeth I forgot earlier. Simple details. Drawing Anubis as a teenager was a prompt on my personal list for a very long time. I don't know why, I guess it just looked cool in my head, and I'm glad it does too now that I've actually drawn it. If you enjoyed this drawing, leave a like and a comment telling me what I should draw next. You should subscribe if you haven't already, because that will make me happy. In the description you can find links to my Twitter and my Instagram where there's even more of my art for you to enjoy. I'm Detroit, he's Anubis, and you're welcome. Bye!